What's up, guys? Welcome to the Momentum Trading Lab. All right, let's get into it. So in today's pre-market analysis, we are going to go through the dollar index, the Nasdaq and Bitcoin, and we are going to have a look at the weekly, the daily, and the 4-hour charts in preparation for the coming trading week. So I'm going to start the analysis with the dollar index weekly chart. So to me, the dollar index is still looking bullish. So let's see what's going on in the chart. So first off, we came into this area. So this is where we had sell side liquidity. So the market makers brought it into this area to buy up all of the sell stops. And as you can see, they pushed it to the upside. And then we had a high right here. So this would have been the draw on liquidity. And we already took this high, but we didn't displace below it, which tells me that it is potentially reaching for this high or even this high right there. Okay, so this has been taken. So the next area we are watching is going to be this high at 105.883. And then also I'm looking at this high right there. It's also in this weekly fair value gap. And then once we go one down time frame to the daily, we'll see that there's an untouched daily fair value gap in that area as well. So over here we have these equal highs. So that tells us that there's a high likelihood that there is buy side liquidity above these highs. And we know the market making algorithm goes towards liquidity and imbalances. And this liquidity is right there. So it's just there for the taking. So it's likely it will move into this area. That's our relative equal highs. And then we want to see our price react when we get to this level at 107.993. Okay, and then also let's pull a Fibonacci from the high to the low. Okay, and then this is the fair value gap on the weekly. Want to see what's going on towards the left. Okay. Okay, so it seems likely. Obviously, price action was very oversold in this area, and now it's starting to move to the upside towards the buy side liquidity. The premium range is above 107.175. So it seems likely that it's going to gravitate towards this buy side liquidity at 107.993 into this weekly fair value gap. There's not really any imbalances right here on the weekly chart. There's a low right there, but I think it's going to go for the buy side first before coming back for the sell side liquidity. So it's going to, as it moves to the upside, induce more sell stops below this low. Sell side. Right, so on the weekly, it still looks bullish. Definitely looks like it's gravitating towards one of these highs and maybe towards this fair value gap. Let's go down one time frame. And then let's refine this fair value gap on the daily. We are going to look at this imbalance. Okay, so the lower end of this imbalance is at 108.424 and the high end of the gap is at 109.495. Okay, go back. Okay, so earlier in the week, we identified these imbalances right here. We had one right there and one right there. So my initial projection was potentially a move down into this fair value gap, which did not happen. It came into this one, touched the midpoint of that fair value gap, and then started to move away. So this one right here is still unclaimed. And then something else that we looked at during the course of last week was this volume imbalance right there. Right, so before we came to this point, we identified this volume imbalance. I think we've been looking at this for the past 2 weeks, and we mentioned that this might act as resistance. So we might see rejection right there and then get the move into this fair value gap. So we got the rejection at the volume imbalance. It didn't go to the fair value gap as projected. It moved into this one and then started to move back to the buy side liquidity. Took the liquidity above this high, but there was no displacement to the downside, which tells us that it's more likely that it's going to continue to the upside. And then also we are starting to break through this volume imbalance, which also tells me that it wants to move towards these highs that we identified on the weekly chart, and even maybe the fair value gap that we identified here on the daily chart. Okay, let's have a look at the 4-hour. Okay, so right here there was a little imbalance. They tapped into it, started to move away. I guess it's obviously likely that they might just push it into this area to grab up some liquidity before pushing it back to the upside. Have a look at the 1-hour. So over here we have these equal lows. And then on the 1-hour, let's refine this fair value gap from the 4-hour to the 1-hour. Okay, so this is our equal lows. And we know that below relative equal lows is the sell side liquidity. Looks like it's starting to print a high right there. So we have a high with a lower high to the left. And now we just need one right there. And that could be the start of the move down to reprice this area before continuing to the upside. So this liquidity pool is at 105.081. Let's also get a Fibonacci on this. Okay, so we have the Fibonacci 618 and the 706 OTE entry right in this fair value gap. So definitely keep an eye on these two levels. The 618 is at 104.882 and the 706 is at 104.881. So right now it seems likely move back into this fair value gap to reprice, then get to move to the upside. You can see on the indicator, it looks like the 4 hours also starting to lose momentum. That might just need to come back, as mentioned, on the 1 hour to reprice, reset, and then continue to the upside. All right, so just to recap the dollar index quickly, that we came from sell side over here on the 10th of July. Then at this run up, we broke past this high, but there was no displacement to the downside. It just continued to the upside. Then on the daily, we are breaking past the volume imbalance. So it seems likely that the dollar is reaching for this high at 105.883 and this high at 107.993. And then we have on the daily chart the fair value gap starting at 108.373 and the higher end at 109.509. So on the daily and the weekly, we are bullish. On the 4 hour, we are bullish after a reset and a bounce off the 618. So the 1 hour and the 4 hour suggest a retrace, but to knock out these relative equal lows. So the sell side below the lows, reprice the fair value gap, bounce potentially out of the OTE area, and then continue to the upside and go for those highs that we identified on the higher term time frame. All right, so that's it for the dollar index. I'm not gonna dig into the lower term time frames right now, seeing that the market is still closed. We'll start digging into the lower term time frames from tomorrow again. Right, so let's have a look at the Nasdaq. Okay. Okay, so the daily is suggesting a move to the downside, and that also correlates with what we are seeing on the dollar index. The dollar index is definitely looking bullish, and it looks like it is trying to reach for those highs. Okay, I think I'm gonna start on the 4 hour. Okay, so on the 4 hour, we have these relative equal lows, so they are likely inducing people to go long and put their stop losses below these lows, because this kind of looks as a support, right? So they are likely inducing people to go long, put their stops right there, and then probably during the course of tomorrow, we'll see them move into this liquidity and then potentially move to the upside to take care of these imbalances. Yeah, so this is our okay, so on the 4 hour, we know we have liquidity below 15,352. Get a fib on this impulse. Okay, so we are in the discount area for this leg to the upside. Want to quickly fill in these little volume imbalances. Okay, so a lot of people don't look at these volume imbalances, but they tend to provide pretty good levels. You normally get pretty good reactions in price action from these little volume imbalances. We saw it on the dollar index during the course of, I think it was last week or the week before. So we were projecting when the dollar got close into this area, we were projecting a bit of a rejection from this area. That is exactly what happened. So we could potentially see those areas act as support. So this volume imbalance starts at 15,300. The next one is at 15,185. So seeing that the dollar is reaching for higher prices, seems likely that the Nasdaq will gravitate towards these inefficiencies in the chart. And then also we have this low right here. So there will definitely be a bunch of sell side liquidity built up below this low. Okay, that's our sell side. Let's go down to the 4 hour. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly drop down one time frame and then go back to the 4 hour. So just want to go to regular trading hours. So also see on the regular trading hours chart, we still have that low right there. So this is definitely going to be a high liquidity low, because this low was formed in a New York AM session. So we know that this is a high liquidity low. So it seems likely they will raid the liquidity before potentially seeing a little move to the upside. Then we have this new day opening gap. Let's quickly get that on the chart. Okay, so that's your new day opening gap, and you can just quickly look left and quickly back test it. These gaps tend to not stay open for very long. We had one right there, they closed it. One right there, they closed it. There was one right there, they came into it. We moved to the downside. So this is a very strong draw on liquidity indication. So this gap starts at 15,608, and then the upper end of the gap is at 15,693. And then we also have these fair value gaps right here. Quickly get a fib for this impulse leg down. Then we have the 786 right in that area. Go back to the electronic trading hours. And then we have another small one, a small fair value gap on the 1 hour right there at the consummate encroachment. Okay, so new day opening gap with the fair value gap, and then with liquidity right here. So my thinking is they come for the liquidity first. Knock out all of the longs, then move it to the upside to reprice that fair value gap in this area and the new day opening gap, and then getting this move to the downside. So that will be your lower high, and then we'll probably make a series of lower highs and lower lows going into these levels, and then we'll observe price action once we eventually get into this area. On the 4 hour, the momentum is resetting. I'm setting up for that move to the upside. Look at the 1 hour. 1 hour is looking ready to make a push to the upside as well. So we are just waiting for the liquidity rate. You see the 15-minute. There's obviously still bearish market structure on the 15-minute. There was this when it came into, and now it looks like it wants to go into the sell side liquidity. We have this local low, and then the one we identified on the regular trading hours chart as well. So it seems very likely to move into this area, and then potentially displacement out of here towards that towards those gaps on the 4 hour chart. Okay, so let's quickly just quickly recap the Nasdaq. So on the 4 hour, we have relative equal lows. So it's likely they are inducing people to put their stop losses below these lows in an attempt to make money to the upside. So it's likely the market makers or the algorithm or whatever you will come and raid the liquidity and then move it towards the imbalances. And then on the regular trading hours chart, go to the 1 hour, identified the new day opening gap with a 4 hour fair value gap more or less in the same range. That on the 1 hour. I should go back to electronic. So we have the new day opening gap in the same area as the fair value gap. So this is going to be a strong draw on liquidity in my opinion, after we raided the sell side liquidity. All right, that's what I see for the analysis for the Nasdaq right now. All right, let's have a quick look at Bitcoin and then I'll be signing off. Okay, so on Bitcoin, we had these series of relative equal lows. So this was a strong indication of a lot of liquidity being built up below this low, these lows, I mean. And you can see it by the displacement we got out of this area. So they basically induced, you can call it trend line traders if you will. You can see how these lows more or less connect. So they would have seen this as support, and they would have probably targeted long entries whenever price comes to this line, and then they'll put their stop somewhere in this area. They just knocked everyone out, got the displacement to the upside. All right, so let's see what's likely to happen next. Okay, let's get a Fibonacci on this. Okay, so on the 4-hour, we have this fair value gap right here. The lower end is at 26,920, with the high end being at 27,192. And now they printed these equal highs, inducing traders to go short and put their stop losses above these highs. But we have this fair value gap, and this tends to be a pretty strong draw on liquidity whenever you have a fair value gap and these equal highs. So liquidity and an imbalance, so it's likely to tap into this area and then come and attack some of the sell side liquidity. So we have a nice low here on the 4-hour, and this one is at 26,217. Next liquidity pool is at 25,764, and then we have the fair value gap with the high end being at 25,614, and we have this fair value gap in the OTE area. Most likely we could see a retrace back into this area before seeing another leg to the upside. We can have a look at the daily. Not really much different than the 4-hour, except on the daily you can see the oscillators are starting to get extended, providing confluence that we could see this little leg to the downside. You can see how flat the 4-hour is. It's still pointing to the downside. So it looks like the daily will continue leaning on this, with just that little pop to the upside to clear out the buy side liquidity, reprice, and then a little leg to the downside. Alrighty, so that's been my pre-market analysis for today. I will keep everyone updated in the Discord as I see the market change. I might not be as active in the Discord tomorrow. I have some stuff going on, but I will be back for the New York afternoon silver bullet session. I'll be streaming live in that time, and I'll be potentially posting an update for the New York Open, what I see and what potential setups are available. And with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in today, and I hope everyone has a great Sunday. And with that being said, cheers.